Game Designer in Progress, Episode 0 for April 29th, 2011. Hello World. What is Game Designer in Progress? I wanted to see more examples of other people's work with prototypes and the whole game development process, so I figured I'd get the ball rolling with some of my own stuff. It's my hope that others will join me in sharing what works for them, failing in the open so we can all benefit, and we can learn the process together. Right now I'm working on a game called Moldcraft. It's a simulation game where you start off as a tiny mold spore. You spread across a backyard and eventually you become big enough to take over an entire house. It's very grounded in trying to see things differently. I started off with a little challenge to myself. I asked myself, what wouldn't be fun to play as? And how could I make it fun? And when you find something gross growing on your tomato in the fridge one day, you have your answer. So how will this game work? The central experience of this game is growth. To support that, the primary mechanics revolve around managing moisture and nutrients, your primary resources. However, so it feels intuitive, I want the numbers to be largely hidden, and to use touch and direct manipulation as much as possible. All of these should fuel each other, and the benefits should go both ways, so the player has a direct connection with the feeling of growth. I put together a little prototype kit to start working on this game. I basically scoured craft stores and office supply stores for as many random things as I could find. But I settled on a couple core components that I think anyone should go for if they're building their own kit. You'll need a lot of graph paper and a lot of pencils, because you'll be erasing constantly. It's also important to take notes so you can remember why you made certain decisions. I do this on plain text on my iPad. You'll also need lots of dice for random number generation, but you can also use them as markers for various numbers. And I recommend some glass stones of various colors to use as units or counters. Lastly, index cards make great on-the-fly playing cards, and if you don't like a card, you can go ahead and tear it up. This was one of my first prototypes. It's turn-based, with one turn equaling about 10 seconds of real game time to bridge that gap between turn and real game time. Very simple, basically just representing movement of mold over time and capturing nutrients. The white stones stood in for the mold, the pennies for captured resources, and the red stones stood in for uncaptured resources. The first iteration was pretty predictable, but the prototype suggested some other cool features I could add. Larger map size, different types of spores, different styles of movement, for example. So I expanded to 4 boards with different arrangements of nutrients. The triangle on the right, for instance, represents a leaf you can grow over. I added moisture as a resource, which ticked down once a turn, and you had to keep your moisture high to keep placing spores. I also built randomly generated levels from a deck of boards and placed a new one whenever I expanded across a border. The problem, though, was as I added different movement types and resources to keep track of, the sheer bookkeeping aspect of the prototype overwhelmed the playing testing, and it became way too complicated. I went back to the drawing board to try to get at the core of the gameplay I was looking for, that dynamic of growth. I wanted to have the same feeling of advancement you feel when you're playing a strategy game, and you only control a certain amount of the map at first, and then you become slowly more powerful and expand to take over the entire map. I started looking for other games that capture that dynamic of advancement, but without adding extra complexity along the way. I decided to model my game off of Katamari. In Katamari, you start off as a small ball, with lots of large obstacles. As you pick up more and more junk, you slowly grow larger over time, and things that used to be obstacles become far easier to deal with. You get that sense of advancement from seeing the world shrink as you grow larger. I took this idea of the world expanding to heart, and drew a map of the backyard. I layered in these squares you can see on the left to represent various levels of size. So say you start really small, this would be one screen. The tree trunk dominates your world. It's the largest thing in the level, and it's a huge obstacle to your advancement. But as you get bigger, the tree trunk becomes less dominant. When you get larger and more of the world becomes open to you, you discover different obstacles, but previous obstacles like the tree trunk become helpful to you. Maybe if you're big enough, you can grow into them and use them as sustenance. Now you're even larger, you're more powerful, and you can see more of the world around you. And the tree trunks, which were previously huge, are now far easier to deal with. When you reach the last level, you have access to the entire backyard, and your goal, the dryer vent, which will get you into the house. At the same time, the mystery of your surroundings starts to unravel as you expand. With each growth level, you get a little extra hint at who lives in this house and what's going on here. So in the next 2 weeks, I'll produce a new video, hopefully with some more stuff to show. My goal is to build 2 to 3 playable prototypes that represent the primary systems of Moldcraft, mainly the resource and growth system. I also want to force my prototype on at least one other person. It'll force me to actually explain the system well, and I'll see immediately if another human being can grok the game world I'm trying to build. I'd absolutely love feedback if you have any. I want to make this as useful as possible, so please send any improvements you can think of. Also, if you've got something you want to share, a game you're working on, a piece of art, maybe a League of Legends champion idea you have, send it my way and I'll try to put it in the next video. Pictures, snippets of text, anything you want to send, email it to matt@hungrygamer.net. Send any comments you have to my email. You can follow me on Twitter @hungryfilmmaker. And please visit me on the web. My blog is hungrygamer.net, where I link to tons of great reading on games and game design. And please check out my portfolio site at mattagnello.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.